vast expanse of time, Africa's history unfolds like a captivating tapestry, weaving tales of triumphs, tragedies, and resilience. Join us on a journey through the 16th to the 20th century as we explore the rich and diverse heritage of the African continent in 7 segments. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more educative content. Segment 1. The African Kingdoms. In the 16th century, Africa boasted a mosaic of vibrant and sophisticated kingdoms, each with its unique cultural, political, and economic characteristics. Among these, the Mali Empire stood as a testament to the grandeur of West Africa. Ruled by legendary figures like Mansa Musa, Mali was not only a thriving center of trade but also a beacon of learning and culture. The city of Timbuktu emerged as a renowned center for scholars, attracting intellects from across the Islamic world. As we move eastward, the Songhai Empire dominated the Sahel region. With its capital, Gao, strategically positioned along the trans-Saharan trade routes, Songhai became a vital hub for commerce. The empire's military prowess, exemplified by leaders like Askia Muhammad, allowed it to expand its influence and control a vast territory. In southern Africa, the great Zimbabwe civilization flourished. Nestled in the heart of modern-day Zimbabwe, the city of Great Zimbabwe was a marvel of architecture, with its intricate stone structures and advanced urban. These African kingdoms were interconnected through extensive trade networks, exchanging goods and ideas across the continent. Gold, salt, textiles, and spices were among the commodities that traversed the Sahara and maritime roads, fostering cultural exchanges and contributing to the prosperity of these empires. The richness of African cultures was not confined to material wealth alone. The diversity of languages, arts, and traditions within and between these kingdoms showcased the complexity and depth of African societies. Oral traditions, rites, and elaborate court ceremonies were integral parts of these civilizations, serving as means of preserving and transmitting knowledge across generations. Yet, as the 16th century unfolded, these kingdoms faced external pressures. The arrival of European explorers and the beginning of the Atlantic slave trade disrupted the established patterns of trade and led to profound changes in the socio-economic landscape of Africa. Despite these challenges, the legacies of the African kingdoms endure. The cultural achievements, architectural marvels, and economic systems laid the foundation for the resilience and strength that would define Africa in the centuries to come. As we journey through time, the footprints of these kingdoms remain imprinted on the canvas of Africa's rich and diverse history. Segment 2. The Age of Exploration. As the 16th century unfolded, the African continent found itself thrust onto the global stage with the onset of the Age of Exploration. European powers, driven by the quest for wealth, sought new trade routes to Asia and stumbled upon the vast and unexplored territories of Africa. The coastal regions became key points of contact, setting the stage for a tumultuous period of interaction. Portuguese explorers, such as Vasco da Gama, rounded the Cape of Good Hope, establishing trade routes that linked Europe, Africa, and Asia. However, their arrival marked the beginning of a darker chapter in African history. The demand for labor in the burgeoning colonies, coupled with the desire for valuable resources, set in motion the transatlantic slave trade. European powers, including Portugal, Spain, Britain, France, and the Netherlands, established coastal trading posts and forts along the African coast. These outposts served as bases for the brutal slave trade that would devastate African societies for centuries. Millions of Africans were forcibly taken from their homes, enduring the harrowing Middle Passage across the Atlantic, where many perished. The impact of the slave trade was profound, leaving lasting scars on the African continent. Societies were disrupted, families torn apart, and the social fabric irreversibly altered. The economic implications were immense, as Africa's human resources were exploited for the benefit of distant colonial powers. Simultaneously, European powers, driven by a lust for resources, began the colonization of Africa. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 formalized the partitioning of the continent among European nations, resulting in arbitrary borders that disregarded the diverse ethnic and cultural landscapes of Africa. This marked the beginning of the scramble for Africa, a period characterized by ruthless exploitation and oppression. The exploitation extended beyond the slave trade. European powers sought valuable resources such as rubber, ivory, gold, and diamonds, often leading to the ruthless extraction and depletion of Africa's natural wealth. The impact of colonialism reverberated across the continent, affecting social structures, economies, and political systems. The age of exploration and subsequent colonization left an enduring legacy of trauma and inequality. Africa became a battleground for imperial powers, and the scars of this era continue to shape the geopolitical landscape and socio-economic conditions of the continent today. The forced encounters of the 16th to the 20th century set the stage for a complex and challenging chapter in Africa's history. Segment 3. The Scramble for Africa. The late 19th century marked a dark chapter in Africa's history as European powers engaged in the ruthless scramble for Africa. Fueled by the desire for imperial expansion, these European nations sought to secure strategic resources, establish trade routes, and exert political dominance over the vast and diverse continent. 1. Berlin Conference. As the scramble intensified, the major European powers convened at the Berlin Conference in 1884 to formalize the rules of engagement. Led by figures like Otto von Bismarck, the participants, including Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, and Portugal, arbitrarily divided Africa among themselves. The conference disregarded Africa's cultural and ethnic complexities, drawing borders that would later become a source of conflict. 2. Impact on indigenous peoples. The imposition of European rule had profound consequences for Africa's indigenous populations. Traditional social structures were disrupted, and local economies were exploited for the benefit of the colonizers. The arrival of European powers often led to the displacement and marginalization of native communities. 3. Economic exploitation. The primary motivation for the scramble was economic gain. Africa's vast resources, including rubber, ivory, minerals, and later oil, were systematically exploited by colonial powers. The extraction of these resources often occurred without regard for the well-being of local populations, leading to economic imbalances that persist to this day. 4. Cultural and religious impact. European colonization brought with it the imposition of Western cultural and religious values. Indigenous belief systems were often suppressed, and missionary activities sought to convert Africans to Christianity. This cultural clash left lasting imprints on African societies, shaping their identity and relationships with the outside world. 5. Resistance movements. Despite the overwhelming force of European colonization, Africa did not succumb without a fight. Resistance movements, led by charismatic leaders like Samori Toure, Menelik II, and the Mahdi in Sudan, emerged to challenge the imperial invaders. These movements, though not always successful, sowed the seeds of anti-colonial sentiment that would later fuel independence struggles. 6. Legacy of arbitrary borders. The arbitrary borders drawn during the scramble for Africa had profound and lasting effects. Many of the modern-day conflicts on the continent can be traced back to these artificial divisions, as ethnic groups and communities found themselves arbitrarily separated or forced into uneasy alliances. 7. Humanitarian impact. The scramble had a devastating humanitarian impact, particularly during the Congo Free State's brutal rule under King Leopold II of Belgium. The exploitation of the Congo's rubber resources led to widespread atrocities, including forced labor, mutilations, and mass killings, leaving an enduring scar on the collective memory of the African people. In the wake of the scramble for Africa, the continent was left grappling with the consequences of colonial rule. The scars of this period continue to shape Africa's geopolitical landscape and influence its quest for unity, identity, and development in the 21st century. Segment 4. Resistance and Independence Movements. Despite the subjugation, Africa never surrendered its spirit. Resistance movements emerged, fueled by charismatic leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, and Nelson Mandela. These visionaries inspired independence movements that ultimately shattered the chains of colonialism. Segment 5. Post-colonial challenges. The mid-20th century marked a pivotal moment in African history as the continent emerged from the shackles of colonial rule. However, the journey towards independence was accompanied by a host of challenges that tested the resilience of these newly formed nations. Political instability. As colonial powers withdrew, many African nations grappled with political instability. The sudden transition from authoritarian rule to self-governance left a power vacuum that was exploited by rival factions and military leaders. Coups, civil wars, and internal conflicts became unfortunate hallmarks of this era. Economic struggles. The economic legacy of colonialism cast a long shadow over post-colonial Africa. Many nations found themselves economically dependent on their former colonizers, as the extraction of resources during the colonial era had often left the local economies skewed and underdeveloped. Efforts to establish sustainable economies faced numerous hurdles, exacerbated by external debts and unfavorable trade terms. Ethnic tensions. The arbitrary drawing of borders during the colonial era created artificial nations that often encompassed a mosaic of ethnic groups with diverse languages, cultures, and histories. This led to simmering ethnic tensions that erupted in conflicts, hindering the formation of cohesive national identities. Struggle for national unity. The challenge of building a sense of national unity was paramount. Leaders grappled with the task of forging a collective identity that could transcend ethnic, linguistic, and regional differences. Initiatives to promote a shared national culture and language were undertaken, but the process was fraught with complexities. Cold War influence. The geopolitical landscape of the post-colonial era was heavily influenced by the Cold War rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. African nations became pawns in the ideological struggle, with superpowers supporting various regimes based on their alignment with either capitalism or socialism. This external interference often exacerbated internal conflicts and hindered the development of stable governance structures. Health and environmental challenges. Beyond political and economic concerns, Africa faced health and environmental challenges. Diseases like malaria and HIV/AIDS took a heavy toll on populations, while environmental issues such as deforestation and desertification posed threats to agricultural practices and livelihoods. Human rights struggles. The fight for human rights gained prominence as African nations sought to establish just and equitable societies. Movements advocating for democracy, freedom of speech, and an end to corruption began to emerge, shaping the trajectory of governance and setting the stage for future reforms. Despite these formidable challenges, the post-colonial period also witnessed remarkable achievements. Visionary leaders like Julius Nyerere of Tanzania and Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana promoted ideologies of self-reliance and Pan-Africanism, laying the groundwork for a new era in which African nations would assert their independence and pursue a path of self-determination. Segment 6. Apartheid and the struggle for equality. South Africa bore witness to one of the most profound struggles against racial oppression, apartheid. The courageous efforts of leaders like Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu, along with global solidarity, dismantled the oppressive system and paved the way for a more inclusive South Africa. Segment 7. African Renaissance. As the 20th century unfolded, Africa embarked on a transformative journey, experiencing a renaissance that revitalized the continent on various fronts. This period saw a resurgence of cultural pride, economic development, and political stability, with several nations leading the way towards a brighter future. 1. Economic growth. Africa's economic landscape underwent a profound shift during the late 20th century. Emerging from the shackles of post-colonial economic challenges, countries like Nigeria, South Africa, and Ghana embraced economic reforms and diversification. Natural resources, technological advancements, and foreign investments fueled unprecedented growth, establishing Africa as a global player in the new millennium. 2. Political transformation. The political arena experienced a wave of change as African nations sought stability and good governance. Visionary leaders, including Nelson Mandela in South Africa, Jerry Rawlings in Ghana, and Thabo Mbeki, played pivotal roles in steering their nations towards democracy and inclusivity. Multi-party systems emerged, fostering political political pluralism and encouraging citizen participation. 3. Peace and security. The African Renaissance was marked by concerted efforts to address regional conflicts and promote peace. Organizations like the African Union and regional bodies took proactive roles in conflict resolution and peacekeeping missions. Collective action aimed to prevent and resolve conflicts, fostering an environment conducive to development and cooperation. 4. Technological advancements. The late 20th century witnessed a technological revolution that bridged gaps and connected Africa with the rest of the world. The widespread adoption of mobile phones, the internet, and other technological advancements transformed communication, education, and business. Innovation hubs emerged, fostering a new generation of African tech entrepreneurs and contributing to the continent's global influence. 5. Cultural Renaissance. The African Renaissance wasn't just about economic and political growth, it was a celebration of cultural diversity and heritage. Arts, literature, music, and cinema flourished, showcasing the vibrancy of African creativity. Renowned artists like Chinua Wole Soyinka and Miriam Makeba became cultural ambassadors, sharing the richness of African culture with the world. 6. Challenges and opportunities. Despite the remarkable progress, the African Renaissance faced its share of challenges. Persistent issues such as poverty, inequality, and corruption demanded continuous attention. However, these challenges were seen not just as obstacles but as opportunities for sustainable development, prompting the continent to invest in education, healthcare, and social welfare programs. As the African Renaissance unfolded, it left an indelible mark on the continent's trajectory. The newfound spirit of resilience, innovation, and unity positioned Africa as a rising force in the global arena. As the 21st century dawned, Africa continued to build on its rich history, embracing the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead, confident in its ability to shape a future that reflects the aspirations of its diverse and dynamic people. Thank you for joining us on the journey through the 16th to the 20th century as we explored on the rich and diverse heritage of the African continent. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more educative content. See you in the next video.